Hey, so my name is Aaron Boswell, and for the last 8 years here in Canada, one of the things that I have been doing is working with church planting in the world of church planting. I actually moved here in May. It'll be 8 years ago, and first moved to Winnipeg and helped plant a church there by God's grace. And then after that, that's where I met my wife, Samantha, and then after that we got married, and then we moved to Montreal and helped plant another church there, and then came to Vancouver in just over 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and found a great church here in the city that is committed to church planting. And so we very quickly found our hearts just kind of in a lot of alignment with them as far as a lot of things that they were doing. That's a great church called Westside, and came on staff about 2 years ago, a little under 2 years ago, as the director of interns, and we kind of laid out this whole thing with a new training ministry for interns and then apprentices, and then hopes that we would do apprentice, and hopes that we would do a church planting residency, so that we could just see more churches planted here in Vancouver, throughout the Lower Mainland, across Canada, and Lord willing into the nations. And so I'll tell you a little bit more of my story in a couple of days, but I always, when I tell people that I do church planting, I train people for that, or I'm just in that whole world and process, they're always super intrigued by it. And so I thought that what I would do, because my wife and I actually are starting in about a year from now, we're actually leaving Vancouver and moving to Winnipeg to plant a new church. And so I thought what I would do is, for the next year, maybe year and a half, I don't know into how long, but just keep this YouTube channel, create this YouTube channel, use it to kind of show our journey all along the way. Because people ask me all the time, back in Winnipeg, or when we were in Montreal previously, what do you mean that you helped start a church? What in the world does that mean? And so I'm hoping this video can, one, help me, because my memory is horrible. You can ask my wife. But also so that I can have kind of a reminder of a lot of things that God did in and along the way. And so I'm going to be using this channel really just as that. So I'm going to be coming live, I don't even know how often, but just to kind of chronicle everything that we're seeing God do bit by bit as we walk into all of this. So throughout the next couple of days, we're actually having an info session at our church on Sunday, and I'm going to try to get a video recording of that, throw it up here as well, so you can see us really share our whole story of how and why God kind of led us to Winnipeg. So I'm not going to cover that right now, but I will let you know. So tomorrow, actually, there is a church planting 2-day kind of conference, and so I'm headed to that. It's actually meeting at our church building, the place where our church gathers. So it's meeting there, and so I'll be there tomorrow, Wednesday, and then on Thursday, just hanging out, meeting church planters, talking all about church planting, God's heart for seeing His name and renown go forth into all the world. And so, yeah. What else do I want to tell you right now? I can tell you what book I'm reading right now. I'm reading this book. It's called Everyday Church. Steve and Tim. So Steve Timmis and Tim Chester have been huge influences on me for the last 10 years, maybe. I think that's when I first got a book that they wrote called Total Church. And so actually when we planted for the first time in Winnipeg 8 years ago, and then we planted in Montreal, there's some really formative things of what does it mean for you to see your church as your family, specifically as your small group, because it's kind of where you can live that out, a lot of your identity. And so anyway, I'm rereading this book because I love it, and I need good reminders, because I'm tempted and swayed away from seeing kind of my everyday as the overflow of what does it mean to follow and love Jesus. And so I'm excited about that. What else? Oh, I'll tell you where. So we're planting in Winnipeg. We're planting in a neighborhood called Sage Creek. So Sage Creek is it's a newer neighborhood. It's between like 7 and 10 years old, depending on who you ask, and what they think about the neighborhood. But it's a neighborhood with a whole lot of young families. A whole lot of goal is to have people that are over the age of 55. As well, there's a 55 plus apartment building. There's regular apartments. There's townhomes. There are homes that almost have zero lots, and so they're just kind of like right next to one another, very, very close to one another. And then there's homes that you can build, and then there are like really expensive, like you can dream up an architect and do whatever you want to do. So my wife and I actually are looking at building our very first home in Winnipeg in Sage Creek here really soon, and I'm really excited about that. So far, we've come up with our name as a ministry of what we're looking at doing in Sage Creek. It's called the Church at Sage Creek, and so we're just this week. In fact, yesterday I was talking with this girl at our church. Her name is Tiffany, and she and I were talking about logo designs and what that looks like, and what are some important things for us as a ministry. And so some of the big things for us, if you're a Rosaria Butterfield fan, I am, and so she has this book called The Gospel Comes with a House Key. And I was actually at Summit Church in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, about a year ago. And one of my buddies, I was in his car, and we were driving and talking, just kind of spending the day together. And he said, if I were looking at like starting a ministry or something, I think what I would say would be a major plumb line or kind of sticky statement that really shows what we believe to be true and who we are as a people. He said it would be the front door of our church is the front door of your home. And I was like, man, that's so good. So I stole that. And so we were talking even this week about how can we even plan and look at a logo that would even show that we believe that. And so, because we really want our church not to be a building that you come to, but a people that are on mission, as we're trying to, 1 Thessalonians 2:8, try to share our lives and the good news of Jesus, the gospel, with people. And so we know that a big place that happens is around dinner tables. And so we're under that as like a huge convictional thing for us is what does it mean to man, we want to see lots of people come to know Jesus that are really far from Jesus, but how do we do that? It's to bring them into our homes, to be the people of God on the mission of God for the glory of God together. And so actually my community group right now, we're going through a book that Steve Timmis wrote, man, probably 10 years ago. It's called Missional Community Life. I don't even know if it's available anywhere. And we're walking through that, which really teaches you how do you as a group learn how to share your life together, and just really practical ways on how to do that. And so one of our girls last week, Emily, was even talking about that, about how she is really thinking through that even as a young mom of, okay, so how do I open up my life to you as people in my community group, but also to other people that I'm trying to share my life and the good news of Jesus with. And so those are the kind of conversations I love having, and that have really been a hallmark of the churches that we've seen God plant in Manitoba and in Quebec. And so anyway, I'm excited about that. A little bit of info about me as we close. So I'm originally from the States. My dad was a missionary kid in Brazil, met and married my mom, who's from Dallas. And then they started having kids. And my dad was a pastor. And so grew up hearing and knowing about Jesus from a really early age. Became a Christian when I was 6, and continue to follow Jesus throughout life. I had this moment when I was about 11 where our family had moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I was really questioning faith at that point. I went from knowing a whole bunch of Christians and having a really stable home and school kind of environment and church environment to where I was one of the only Christians I knew at my school. And so just walking through the pressures and stresses of that, and around that time was when Eminem came out, not the candy, the rapper. And so I thought I was a thug. It was awesome. Trying times, walking through puberty, listening to Eminem. It was crazy. And anyway, throughout that, I was really questioning a lot of things. I knew things in my head, but my heart was far from it. And I went and actually heard David Platt preach at a week-long camp, and God really convicted me. And I really felt my life was drastically transformed. So it wasn't just simply head knowledge, but deep heart knowledge of who I am in Jesus and what God's calling me to do. And from that early time, I knew that it would be something with leaving the U.S. and living somewhere else. And so God kind of took me on a journey. I lived, I was a youth pastor for a couple of years, and then moved to France for a couple of years, had a short stint at Banana Republic in the meantime, in between those. And then I was in France for about 6 months with a church planting network, helping just meet people and build relationships and share Jesus, and teaching English, conversational English. And then got this call from this guy who I was in France saying, "Hey man, I don't know if you'd ever want to consider moving to Canada, but we heard that you love the gospel and you speak French, so do you want to come?" And I said, "Sure." So I finished up undergrad in North Carolina and went to the Church Planting Training Institute at Summit Church in Raleigh, Durham, and then moved to Winnipeg. And by God's grace, we saw God do a lot of cool stuff there and a lot of cool stuff in Quebec. And so it's just the wildest thing. I'll share more of this story later, but it's the wildest thing that God's calling us and leading us back to the city that I deeply love and these people that I deeply love. And so we just could not be more thrilled. But anyway, this video has gone a lot longer than I thought it would. That's one of the problems when you start filming. You don't realize that you can say a whole lot in a short amount of time. Anyway, so I'll end this video now, but I'll shoot a little bit more tomorrow and maybe interview some different people that I meet in the church planting world. So yeah, use this as a resource in the future. I'm talking to myself, or any of you who are following along, and can't wait to see what God does in this next year. So it's exciting. I'm gonna go read some more of this book because my wife said alpha right now, and I think she's gonna be home soon. My kids finally fell asleep. Praise God. Took like an hour.